Ladies and gentlemen, we are 2 nights away from UFC 320 between Magomed Ankalaev and Alex Pereira, the rematch, part two. Magomed Ankalaev had a very, very impressive win against Alex Pereira in the first fight, and now we will be getting ready for Pereira to try and get his redemption, which is a very much needed win for him because if he loses 2 fights in a row to the same person, it's going to derail a lot of his hype that he has around him. But with that being said, let's get into the prelims predictions, and then we'll work our way up to the main event. Starting off with Veronica Hardy going up against Brogan Walker. Gonna go with Veronica Hardy here. Very hard not to go with her. She is dating Dan Hardy, the legendary coach. So she has a very good UFC mind in her corner, and she's been learning a lot from it. She's a very balanced fighter now, and she's learning a lot with her takedowns and her ground game, especially. Um, but I've seen her win a few times in the UFC. No really notable performances. She has lost as well. She lost to Eduardo Mora in her most recent fight, but compared to Brogan Walker, I mean, it should be clear as day why we're picking Veronica Hardy. Brogan Walker might be the worst women's fighter in the entire UFC. Now, don't get me wrong. Her most recent fight was to Yasmin Lucindo, which is a very good UFC fighter. And she did take her to decision, but Lucindo did still clearly win that fight. We also look at she lost her debut to Juliana Miller, who only had 3 fights professionally, and she got knocked out by her. So I don't know. She doesn't even have the size advantage, really. She has a slight reach advantage, and she really just has uh, strong hands. She doesn't really have good striking or a good ground game. So technically, I think Veronica Hardy's levels above her, and I think she's just going to take away this one. She's currently a minus 600 favorite, and for good reason. So I'm going to go with the 97% of picks here and go with Veronica Hardy to win. I'd say probably a dominant decision, but she also could get the finish as well. Next up, we have Ramiz Brahimaj going up against Austin Vanderford. Austin Vanderford is the OnlyFans model. Just kidding, he's not an OnlyFans model. Well, he might be. I don't know. Him and Paige Van Zant have been posting some suspicious activity, which makes me think that he's not fully ready for this fight. But Raheem Brahimaj going up against Austin Vanderford. I'm going to go with Ramiz Brahimaj, excuse me. Austin Vanderford, he did get his first UFC win in his debut against Nikolai Varenikov, but we know that Varenikov is dog shit. He's a very balanced fighter, but he does nothing well, and he has the worst fight IQ possibly in UFC history. So that one means nothing. He's 35 years old. He's pretty big for this division, but I don't know. Something's telling me that Ramiz is going to win this fight. I don't know how. Vanderford's a minus 250 favorite, if I'm being honest here. Brian Myers is coming off a win to Billy Ray Golf, which was a nice submission for him. He knocked out Mickey Gall, which, Mickey Gall is a tough fighter, but he's not necessarily good. So really neither of them have shown that they're that all that good. Vanderford's just a really good wrestler, but he has awful finishes. He can't really get good finishes unless it's to crappy opponents. And then his stand-up's pretty awful as well. His chin's not good either, so I think Ramiz's hands will play a big factor in this. I think Ramiz has the punching power to knock him out. And if Vanderford takes him down, I do think Vanderford doesn't have a good fight IQ to stop Brahimaj's BJJ. He has very good BJJ, and I think that could also play a factor here. But when it comes to who has better finishing potential, Vanderford really doesn't have any. And I think Brahimaj, clear and day, has way better ways to finish this fight. So give me Ramiz Brahimaj. He's currently the 200 underdog. So I will be honest, this might be my only underdog for the predictions, which is kind of crazy, but I feel like a lot of winners are clear for this card. But this is the one where I think that Ramiz Brahimaj will pull off the upset. Next up, we have Punahele Soriano going up against the dude we just talked about that sucks, Nikolai Varenikov. I don't know how this dude's above Austin Vanderford when he literally just lost to him. This dude sucks. Let me be honest. We're going with Punahele Soriano. He is the 220 favorite, and for good reason. Varenikov's win over Francisco Prado, split decision. They both looked awful. Prado moved up in that fight, and it showed that he still sucks. Varenikov would shoot a takedown and then give up his back. Some people would say that fight was entertaining just because of how awful both fighters are. And I would honestly agree with that. I had so much fun watching this fight just because of how awful they were. But Francisco Prado that win means absolutely nothing. And then his most recent losses, like I said, Austin Vanderford on short notice, which is not a good look. And then he lost a split decision to Danny Barlow, which, I mean, we don't really know if Danny Barlow's a decent fighter or not yet. He is undefeated, or was at the time. I think he did lose a fight recently, but I don't know. That's still not really a good loss to have either. So he's 1-2 in the UFC with his best win being Francisco Prado. So really not a good look. He's also 35 years old. He is a little bit bigger. He's 6'1" with a 74-inch reach, but he is getting older, and he's shown that he really doesn't have finishing ability, and he just tries to get through fights with kind of mixing it up, but him mixing it up really never works all that well. But Punahele Soriano, the sole reason I'm going to pick him here is because I think he has a very good kickboxing style to knock out Nikolai Varenikov. I think stand up, it's clearly Punahele Soriano. He just beat Uros Medic, and Uros Medic's a pretty good unranked fighter. I won't say he's amazing, but knocking out Uros Medic is a good look for Punahele Soriano going into this fight, at least. So I'm going to go with Punahele Soriano. I just think his stand-up's way better, and I don't think Varenikov's ground game is all that you have to worry about. He kind of just shoots them when he gets tired. So if Soriano is very conservative in this fight and he keeps his endurance towards later rounds, Varenikov's just going to spam takedowns, and Soriano will stop him every time, and it's just going to make Varenikov even more tired. So give me Punahele Soriano. Give me him winning by knockout in the first round. I don't trust Nikolai Varenikov at all. Patchy Mix versus Jakub Wiklats. They really are hating on Patchy Mix after that debut loss to Mario Bautista. They dropped him all the way down to the prelims. But we got Patchy Mix going up against Jacob Wiklats, or Jakub, however you want to say it. Jakub Wiklats was very hyped up going into this scene. He's from KSW. I'm gonna be honest, he doesn't really have any impressive wins over at KSW. I don't know why people hyped him up so much going into this fight. Or just before he was even in the UFC, a lot of people were high on him, but I don't know. I think this is literally the best matchup for Patchy Mix. I'm gonna go with Patchy Mix here. He's a minus 250 favorite. This is literally the perfect matchup for Patchy Mix. It's the exact same fighting matchup stylistically for him, except Patchy Mix has shown it against way better competition, and he's going to show that there's levels to this, even in different promotions. We normally say that for people coming into the UFC from other promotions, but even from like a promotion like KSW to Bellator, he's going to show that Bellator is a way better promotion than KSW. And he's done it against the likes of Sergio Pettis, who was in the UFC, and he was actually ranked in UFC for a while. And he did it against Magomed Magomedov twice, who was a very, very good Bellator fighter as well. So I think we're going to see that he's going to be able to dominate Jakub on the ground. That's all Patchy Mix's game is, really. It's just take you down. We've seen he's been conservative with his hands recently, so that could play an issue maybe. Maybe Jakub could win the stand-up battle, but I think if it goes to the ground, I think Patchy Mix is going to be able to dominate there. Give me Patchy Mix to get a submission in the second here. He does have a little height advantage, but loses in the reach advantage. And he is slightly older, but I'm gonna go with Patchy Mix here. This is just the perfect matchup for him, and if he really loses this fight, then Patchy Mix is gonna be out the door. But I do think he gets this one done. So give me Patchy Mix by second round submission. Moving on, we have Macy Chasson facing Yana Santos. Um, I don't know really why people think this is a close fight. People are saying Yana Santos has a chance to win this fight. I really don't see it. I'm gonna be honest here. They're hyping her up after beating old Misha Tate and beating Chelsea Chandler, who Chelsea Chandler has been on the highlight reel of like everyone's knockouts. So don't know why they're hyping up Yana Santos really all that much for winning 2 unanimous decisions over one fighter that's just big for the division, but she sucks, and then a very old legend. So I don't know why they're hyping her up that much. She is already 35 years old, so who knows how much longer she can do this for. And she's only 16-8 as well. Normally, we don't really look at records all that much, especially in the women's divisions, but it's not like she has an impressive record either. When we look at Macy Chasson, we've seen her have wars and good finishes as well. We've seen her beat the best of the best. She beat Norma Dumont by split decision. She beat Penny Kienzad by submission. She beat Mayra Bueno Silva by doctor stoppage. So we've seen her do damage to women's fighters. She looked a little bit conservative in the Caitlin Vieira fight, her most recent fight, which she lost, but Caitlin Vieira is starting to show that she's one of the top women fighters in this division. Some people say that Macy Chiasson might be a little bit too much conservative in this fight, but I'm not going to put it against her. I think even if she is conservative, she still wins this fight. I think on the ground game, Santos is very dangerous on the ground, but I think Chiasson can keep up with that. Chiasson has shown that she's also very well on the ground. Obviously, her main style is staying up on the feet and her kickboxing boxing style. Um, but she's just gonna bob and weave, come forward. Even if she's conservative, I still think she's gonna land more on the feet and be able to stop Yana Santos's takedowns. So I think it'll be a close 29-28 decision, but I do really think that Macy Chiasson wins this fight. I don't see a way where Yana Santos wins it. I don't think Yana Santos is gonna keep her down the entire fight. So give me Macy Chiasson to win a 29-28 split decision. Or a unanimous decision, I don't think. I think it'll be clear enough to where Macy Chiasson wins it by unanimous. This is what I'm kind of split on. I'm going to talk about the preview for this fight, and then I'm going to make my prediction after talking about it. But we got Daniel Santos going up against Ju Sang Yu. Ju Sang Yu is considered the Korean Mike Tyson after his knockout over Jeka Sarige. Now, Jeka Sarige is not that good of a fighter, but we've shown that Ju Sang Yu is a very good counterpuncher. If you try and come in and make your move and slip a punch in, Ju Sang Yu is going to counter it with an absolute bomb. He's only had one fight in the UFC, so there's not a lot to go off him. He is undefeated, though, at 9-0 at the age of 31. He has a 4-inch reach advantage, and they're the same height. He is currently the plus 110 underdog, going up against Daniel Santos, who's a very balanced fighter. He's shown that he's all right standing, but his specialty is the ground game. We've seen him beat John Castaneda, Johnny Munoz Jr., and Jeong Yong Lee in his last 3 fights. He's on a 3-fight win streak before losing to Julio Arce. So he's doing pretty well in the UFC currently. I don't. Do I buy into the hype of Ju Sang Yu? Do I think he's going to be able to stop the takedowns of Daniel Santos? I'm not worried about the stand-up. I think Ju Sang Yu has the advantage on the stand-up. I think Daniel Santos, if he tries to come forward, Ju Sang Yu will land those absolute bombs that he has in his hands. I do like that he's patient. I don't like these Asian fighters that come in and that are just good strikers because they tend to end up messing up and they tend to actually not translating over. But I like that Ju Sang Yu is a conservative fighter, and we don't get a lot of unranked Asian fighters coming onto the scene. So that interests me as well. But Daniel Santos, I like that he's a very balanced fighter, so it kind of makes me want to go with him. I don't know. I feel like I should be going with Daniel Santos here, but I really want to buy into the hype of Ju Sang Yu. There hasn't been a lot of Asian fighters that have come onto the scene that I've been high on, but I'm gonna go Ju Sang Yu. He's the underdog here. I know, like I said, there's not a lot of underdogs I picked on this card, so I'm gonna go Ju Sang Yu here. I'm gonna buy into the hype with him. I really love his striking performance against. Yes, I know Jekka wasn't that good, but I really was impressed with it, and I love how he's conservative. That means he's not gonna rush in and get caught by Daniel Santos. I don't think Daniel Santos knocks him out. I think Ju Sang Yu will be the one catching him, if anything. And I know we haven't seen his takedown defense all that well, but Daniel Santos isn't like he isn't dominant on the ground, but he can get those takedowns. So I think since the fights start on the feet, I think that's going to help Ju Sang Yu. And I think Ju Sang Yu will get a later round knockout. I think he'll get the knockout in the 3rd round. But yeah, let me continue the hype of Ju Sang Yu. I'm going to give him the knockout in the 3rd round over Daniel Santos. But if I was to switch any of my picks, it would be this fight. Moving on, we have Farid Basharat going up against Chris Gutierrez. We talked to Chris Gutierrez a little bit before this fight. He's been in the UFC for quite a while now. We didn't really talk a whole much about the fight. I just wished him luck and kind of asked him what he was doing. He was racing with these like racing cars over there in Las Vegas, so it was cool getting to talk to him about that and what he's been doing to have some fun over there in Las Vegas. But cool getting to talk to him. But he's going up against an unranked prospect right now in Farid Basharat. I'm gonna be honest here. It was very hard for me to go with Farid Basharat. That is going to be my pick here. Not only because I talked to Chris Gutierrez before the fight, but as well as Farid really doesn't have a very huge win. Yes, he did beat Damon Blackshear in his debut, which is starting to shape up very nicely because Damon Blackshear's showing that he's one of the better unranked fighters in this division. But like you look at his win over Victor Hugo, Taylor Lapis, Clayson Rodriguez, like none of these wins are like standout performances. And then you look at Chris Gutierrez though, and it's like, all right, well, he beat John Castaneda and Quang Lee, and then lost to Song Yadong and Pedro Munoz. So he's lost to only ranked fighters, and then he beats the unranked fighters. So it's kind of, is Farid Basharat going to be too much of a rising prospect for him, or is Chris Gutierrez going to shut him down? Currently, Basharat is the minus 400 favorite. I think that's honestly very realistic. Basharat is very good at hitting strikes and bouncing out of the pocket, so I'm going to pick Basharat here mainly because he's going to be able to land those shots on Gutierrez and then evade and dodge any strikes that Gutierrez tries to respond with. Gutierrez does have very good boxing hands, though. His kicks are very good as well. He loves dangerously destroying the legs. But I think Basharat's very good at evading strikes, that it won't make a huge difference in this fight. And he's very quick, that I think he'll be able to dodge anything. So give me Basharat here. If he also wants to take it down to the ground, he could do that as well, because he has shown that he has a pretty decent ground game as well, where Gutierrez kind of avoids the ground in all of his fights. So give me Basharat here. He does have a 6-year age advantage, and he has a 4-inch reach advantage as well. So give me Farid Basharat here. But I do think Chris Gutierrez does have a chance to pull off the upset. I kind of hope he does. I think it would be huge, especially in Las Vegas, but going to go with Basharat in this one. Moving on, we have Edmund Shabazian going up against Andre Muniz. Some people are picking Andre Muniz here, and honestly, I don't know whether to. I'm gonna go with Edmund Shabazian here. His record 15-5 is kind of unfortunate because he fought a lot of very great fighters early on. He fought Anthony Hernandez. I'm gonna have to go back here and look. Yeah, this is his fight span in 5 fights. He fought Derek Brunson, lost to ground and pound in the 3rd round. Jack Hermanson, unanimous decision loss. Nasruddin Imavov, 2nd round knockout. Fought Dalcha Lugiamula. He beat him by 2nd round knockout, so he got a win. Then he fought Anthony Hernandez, lost in the 3rd round. So it's kind of impressive that he actually went to later rounds with these fighters, but he got fed to the wolves very early on in his UFC career after going on a huge win streak. His best win was Brad Tavares going into that stretch, and then they just absolutely fed him nonstop. So that kind of ruined his record. If they had given him those 4 losses and gave him, better competition, he could have built, competition that was slowly working his way up instead of just feeding him to the top ranked prospects. I think he would have been able to build his way up to becoming this better fighter. But I don't know. He's a minus 275 favorite as of right now. I think for good reason. Just because he's a very well-balanced fighter. He's shown his striking early on in his fights, but he's slowly become this grappler as well. So he can do a little bit of everything. Andre Muniz, on the other hand, he's really just a BJJ guy who has slowly lost his BJJ effectiveness, if I'm going to be honest here. He doesn't really have it all that well anymore. He's getting old. He's 35 years old now. So he's slowly losing his BJJ, and his stand-up isn't that well. So I think that Edmund Shabazian should win this pretty clearly. I think he should be able to keep it standing and just dominate him on the feet. I'm going to go with Shabazian winning by knockout in the 2nd, and it looks like most people, 91% of people are picking Shabazian. And I think that's for good reason here. Muniz is getting old, and he really just relies on BJJ. And we've seen time and time again that as long as you're not an awful fighter, the BJJ guy's not going to win the fight because they only have BJJ. Moving on, we have Atiba Gauthier going up against Tristan Vines. Now, this fight opened up at minus 1,400 odds. It's kind of gone down to minus 1,000. I'm going to go with Atiba Gauthier here, though. Tristan Vines. We've seen him get brutally knocked out in CFFC, so that's not a good look for him at all. Raheem Forrest knocked him out brutally, and he gets hit a lot, we've seen. So I think this is going to be a very bad matchup for him. I think Atiba Gauthier is going to absolutely kill him in the 1st round. Tristan Vines kind of goes, he's a wrestler, he kind of goes for takedowns, but, excuse me. We're going to see that Atiba Gauthier's takedown defense is going to be able to stop Vines' wrestling. Vines' wrestling isn't really all that good since he's a late-term replacement. He doesn't really have any skills that makes him qualified to be in the UFC. So Gauthier will be able to stop the takedowns if Vines tries shooting early, and Gauthier will probably knock him out in the 1st round. So give me the 23-year-old from Cameroon, baby Francis Ngannou, to get the 1st round knockout. And Atiba Gauthier will probably get another performance of the night. Moving on to the main card, starting off with Joe Pyfer, the policeman, body bags, going up against Abus Magomedov. This one I've been kind of close on, but give me Joe Pyfer here. Joe Pyfer apparently has punching power that's stronger than Francis Ngannou. We don't know how true that is, but when we look at the wins here, they both have very similar kickboxing styles. They have very strong kicks and punches. I don't know. Abus Magomedov has been looking very conservative and very cautious in his later fights, and that kind of worries me here. I don't like how he doesn't throw as much as he used to. Now, he could go back to that, and that's why it's sometimes hard to pick UFC fights, because sometimes they go back to their old ways of, maybe Abus will become very aggressive in this fight because he knows that he needs to. But Joe Pyfer, he's always been this very good, powerful puncher. He doesn't throw a lot of volume, but he makes sure that his hits count. We've seen that in the fight against Kelvin Gastelum and Marc-Andre Barriault. He does also have somewhat of a ground game, although I don't think he's going to use it all that much because he does have the better punching power, and he's going to throw more than Abus Magomedov in this fight. But when we look at the fights here, the reason I wanted to kind of go with Magomedov as well is because his losses are to Sean Strickland, which was kind of rushed, and then he lost to Caio Borralho by unanimous decision. So his only losses are to absolute killers. And then Pyfer as well, though, he only lost to Jack Hermanson in that main event a year ago. But I don't know. We've seen a lot more from Joe Pyfer. We've seen that he's the more balanced fighter, and I think he has the advantage on the stand-up. So therefore, I just have to lean towards him. 77% of people picked Pyfer, and he's also the 220 favorite for good reason here, I think. Another good American fighter to win on this card, I think. So give me Joe Pyfer to win by knockout in the... Give me Pyfer to win by a second-round knockout. Moving on, we got Josh Emmett going up against Yusuf Salal. I'm a little bit cautious about this pick. I don't like how Bilal is a minus 390 favorite. I don't know what he did to deserve that favorite and that high of odds. Beating Calvin Kattar by unanimous decision, I guess, gets you a minus 390 favorite over like a top 5 ranked UFC featherweight. I mean, he has only won one fight in his last 4, which is very concerning, but the people he's lost to are all in the top 5. He lost to Leon Murphy by unanimous decision, Ilya Taporia unanimous decision, and then he lost to a triangle choke to Yair Rodriguez. The problem I have with Josh Emmett is he gets hit so much, and he relies solely on just landing that overhand, and that's why I can't pick him in this fight. Yusuf Salal, kind of like Fareed Basharat, he's very good at landing his strikes and bouncing out. I think he's also quick enough to dodge Josh Emmett's one punch overhand that he tries throwing all the time. He has a very big height and reach advantage, so I know this is a huge step up. I don't like the odds. A lot of people are going to bet on Josh Emmett here, and I don't blame them, but he is 40 years old. He's getting older. And he's going to be I think he's just going to be too slow for Yusuf Zalal. And I don't think he's going to be able to land that one punch knockout on Zalal. Bryce Mitchell isn't really that quick of a fighter, but Yusuf Zalal is very quick. He's very good at landing punches and getting out. I don't think he'll try and take it to the ground at all because Josh Emmett has pretty good takedown defense, but I'm going to rely on Yusuf Zalal's speed and his good striking to get him a decision here. Honestly, I'm going to give him a 30-27 decision. Josh Emmett gets hit way too much, and then when he gets hit, he starts just getting overly confident and just starts throwing way too much, and then he gasses out in the later rounds. So give me Yusuf Zalal to win this by a very dominant decision. Unfortunately, I do love Josh Emmett. He used to be very entertaining to watch, but now he's kind of just getting his head stomped in now. Moving on, we have Yuri Prochazka versus Khalil Rountree. I don't know how this wasn't a main event, I'm going to be honest, of a fight night. This would be an absolute killer 5-round event, even though I don't think it goes 5 rounds. This has been one of the harder picks for me to make. I would say that this is actually the hardest pick on the card for me to make. We got Yuri Prochazka versus Khalil Rountree. I'll talk about the entire fight before I make my prediction. Yuri Prochazka has this very unique style. He loves throwing elbows, and he loves throwing these uppercuts, spinning attacks. He's very aggressive, but we have seen signs of him being conservative. He does get hit a lot, though, which is concerning. His head movement isn't all that well. We kind of saw in his last fight, against Jamal Hill that he kind of does have a pretty decent head movement. Uh, Whether that's he either improved it or he just started using a different technique. But that's also Jamal Hill, who's having a big fall off right now, even though he's fighting the best of the best in the light heavyweight division. Um, but yeah, Yuri has very good power and he's very aggressive and he's very hard to put away. But Khalil Roundtree, I mean, it's so hard not to pick Khalil Roundtree in this fight because he's going to do the exact same strategy that Pereira had. Pereira is a very conservative, powerful kickboxer who damages the legs, and Khalil Roundtree is going to be able to damage Prochka's legs. But the issue I have with Roundtree is that Roundtree falls off and doesn't become that good of a fighter once fighters start rushing in on him. We saw that from Pereira. The only reason Roundtree was winning those first few rounds was because that Pereira was only going for the legs, but Roundtree was able to counter-react with punches after Pereira was damaging, or excuse me, he was damaging Pereira's legs, which was causing Pereira to be conservative, and Roundtree was landing punches whenever Pereira would try to move in, because Pereira was slowing down from the leg kicks, excuse me. I was saying Pereira was landing the leg kicks, but it was Roundtree. And Roundtree's going to do that to Prochka, but the problem with Roundtree was once Pereira rushed in, it was just so easy for Pereira to knock him out. I mean, Pereira landed so much when he would just rush in on him, and Prochka can do the exact same thing. Um, Honestly, I think Prochka could also take down Roundtree if he wanted to. Um, Stand up, it's pretty even, I'd say. Roundtree's got very good Muay Thai. Prochka's got this very unique, powerful style. Um, whether that's conservative or uh, being aggressive, I think when time comes, I think Roundtree will win the earlier rounds. But I think if this goes into a moment where Roundtree's legs are getting damaged badly, I think Prochka's just gonna throw everything in the gas tank, and I think he's just gonna be like, all right, screw it, let me just go knock this dude out. So I think Roundtree will win earlier in the fight, but I think later on, I think Prochka's finally gonna be like, all right, screw it, let me just rush in, and then knock him out. Because I think Prochka definitely has the better aggressiveness and punching power. So give me Yuri Prochka here, but I really am cheering for Khalil Roundtree. He's a very good Christian man, and I don't know. I've loved his rise, but something I've also noticed is he really hasn't beaten anyone that good. Dustin Jacoby split decision, Chris Dawkins knockout, Anthony Smith uppercut knockout, and then Jamal Hill unanimous decision. Like he hasn't really beaten anyone all that good. But we look at Prochka, he beat even if we would have want to count the Jamal Hill loss since we didn't count it for Roundtree, he still did beat Alexander Rakic and he beat Glover Teixeira in that absolutely amazing fight. So, with that being said, I think Prochka has the better resume. We've seen Roundtree get finished to other guys earlier in his career that are more aggressive. So, give me Yuri Prochka to win this by knockout in the third round. But I am cheering for Khalil Roundtree. Moving on, we have Merab Dvalishvili going up against Corey Sandhagen. Um, Pretty easy decision for me here. I do think this will be Merab's hardest fight he's had, stylistically, but I am gonna go with Merab here. He's the minus 380 favorite, which I think is very justifiable. Of course, Sandhagen, he does have a nice height and reach advantage that I think will cause Merab problems, but I think over time, Merab is just going to do what he always does. He has the greatest gas tank in UFC history, and he's just going to spam takedowns. I know he's said that he's going to try and show that he's a better striker than Sandhagen. I think he's just doing that to play with Sandhagen's mind. Sandhagen tried saying that he's going to be able to out grapple and keep up with Merab's grappling, but we're really going to see that no one can keep up with his grappling at all. Sandhagen, I think he'll be able to stop the earlier takedowns and potentially even win the first round. But when it comes to it, Dvalishvili will shoot a million takedowns and just eventually get them, and then he's gonna keep Sandhagen on the feet the entire or on the ground the entire fight if that happens. So, give me Dvalishvili to win a decision here. I think it's a very obvious decision as well. I think it'll be like a 49-46 decision, potentially 48-47, which it could be closer if Sandhagen can stop takedowns in the first two rounds. Um, Maybe he sneaks out the first two rounds, but then Merab wins the last three. Um, but yeah, I'm gonna go with Merab here. Corey Sandhagen, he has looked pretty impressive recently. He's shown his ground game has improved, but he himself said that he needs to work on his ground game in his one of his recent fights. So I'm not going to trust his ground game in this fight, saying that he's going to beat Merab on the ground. Um, and even on the feet, Merab has shown that he's improved in his stand up, like in his recent wins against Merab. So I don't know. I'm just gonna go with Merab here. He's been dominant so far in his UFC career, 20-4, only looking like he's gonna continue to dominate. And Corey Sandhagen, I don't know. I'm not trusting the hype around him so far. I'm not gonna trust that he can beat a guy like Merab, but I do. I'm also cheering for Corey Sandhagen in this fight as well because Corey is a very lovable dude. I just don't see him, you know, keeping this fight standing. I think he really has to rely on the knockout here, and I don't think he gets it. Moving on, finally, to the main event, we have Magomed Ankalaev taking on Alex Pereira 2 in the rematch. First fight was a pretty overall convincing win for Magomed Ankalaev. He is 21-1, with his only loss being Paul Craig, surprisingly. Happy retirement, Paul Craig. Pereira, though, on the other hand, was on a nice win streak before losing to Magomed Ankalaev. Or he was on a nice win streak. I don't know if I said losing streak. But he was on a nice win streak before losing to Magomed Ankalaev, and he could potentially lose to him again. Um, I'm gonna go with Ankalaev here, and the main reason is, and MMA Guru said this as well, but it's just a clear factor here. I don't think there's any chance that Pereira stops all 11 takedowns again in this fight, which is a very good point from MMA Guru. He's becoming a very good MMA. I know he doesn't like being called an analyst, but he's basically an analyst. Because of how good his predictions are. So I don't think that Pereira stops all 11 takedowns again. Because if he wants to be aggressive in this fight, he's going to have to give up that cautious, oh, shoot, he might shoot a takedown here. So either he gives up the takedowns while being aggressive, which I think can just make it easier for Ankalaev to take him down, or he plays conservative again, and we just see a repeat of round one where Ankalaev beats him on the feet, and just works him in the clinch the entire fight because he wasn't on the ground all that much in that fight, which was actually very impressive for Pierre, but it resulted in him having to be very cautious and not being able to be aggressive. We've seen a very cautious Pierre recently, which I've not liked. He was also cautious in that Roundtree fight, and that's why he almost lost that fight as well. Roundtree knocked him down in that fight, which was very unsuspected. So I'm gonna go with Ankalaev here solely because Pierre has been looking very cautious in his recent fights. He's 38 years old. He's getting older here. I pray that Pierre wins this fight for his legacy's sake, and I want him to move up to heavyweight to have a super fight, but I don't see all that much here that Pierre can do to win this fight compared to the last fight because he just looked awful in that last fight. Some people say that his build up to it wasn't all the best, but despite that, I don't know. I just don't like his performance, and I don't think it's going to be all that different here. And if it is different, I think it's just going to be because Ankalaev takes him down more in this fight, and that's going to cause way more problems for Pierre. If Pierre gets taken down in this fight, it's going to be very, very hard for Pierre to get back up. So give me Magomed Ankalaev to win this by decision here. I'm going to say a 49-46 or 48-47 decision here. I think Ankalaev wins it by pretty unanimous decision here, but should be a very entertaining card in Las Vegas. Very excited for the card. I would say probably my most exciting fight is definitely Yuri Prochazka versus Khalil Rountree. Could be a potential fight of the year depending on as long as they don't get knocked out early, but a lot of good entertaining fights on this card. Some upsets we could see here. I think Jakob could potentially upset Patchy Mix. I think Chris Gutierrez could maybe upset Fareed Basharat. I think Magomedov could potentially upset Joe Pyfer. I don't see a way where Josh Emmett pulls off the upset against Yusuf Salau. Some people do, but I really don't. I think Khalil Rountree could pull off the upset against Yuri. And obviously, Pierre's got a punching chance, so I'm going to give Pierre a chance to upset Ankalaev, but it's just very unlikely. I'm not going to choose him to win the second rematch just because of him having punching power. Like, that's just stupid to make the decision on him winning the rematch. So, that being said, those are going to be my predictions for UFC 320. We'll be releasing our predictions Instagram post here tomorrow after the weigh-ins, and then we will give you guys our fight of the night and performance of the night shortly after the card. But with that being said, I want to thank you guys for listening to this podcast episode. We will be releasing our review for this on Sunday, and I want to thank you guys once again. This is all because of you guys in the end, and wouldn't be able to do this if not for anyone listening and supporting it. So I want to wrap this up here. Thank you for looking at these predictions. I think I'm going to do good on this card. I'm going to be honest here. There's 14 fights. I think I'm probably going to go, 9-5, 10-4 range here, honestly. I think there's a few fights that I'll probably get upset in, but thank you guys for listening, and I'll see you next time.